我这video 可能是这样的，即兴播就这样的。
Oh, Vajra video. It looks like you've got something nice to eat. Looks good. Is it kheer? Oh, it's probably kheer.
Oh, today
is Boga Rinpoche there today.
Oh.
Is that Ken Rinpoche? I didn't see well right before. The picture was, the camera so far is hard to see well, but okay. Next, as I said before, have said before, vegetarianism is very difficult in Tibet to be a complete vegetarian because of the if you cannot do something that is possible in a country and a place, then there's a question. But in Tibet, it's difficult to be vegetarian. But still, there are many Tibetan scholars and meditation masters who talked about the benefits of vegetarian and the faults of eating meat, as I've said before. Now, among them, if we think about the Kaju, if you think about many of the Kaju forefathers, gave examples of giving up meat and practicing vegetarian. There are innumerable ones. To give an example, we think among the 3 forefathers of the Kaju lineage, Lord Milarepa, as is recorded in his collected works, when he was at Nyanang Belly Cave. At that time, he was straight with Rinpoche, and Rinpoche was someone who just really didn't listen to what he was told. He didn't listen to what Milarepa said to him. And so it's often said that he was criticized 3 times by his guru for this. And in case, at that time, Rinpoche had some thoughts of the 8 worldly concerns. And Milarepa said to him, you must give up these thoughts of the 8 worldly dharmas. No, Rinpoche thought, no, I've given up my homeland. So and he said, well, in the Dharma texts, if you've given up your homeland, you've accomplished half of the Dharma, it says, right? Just giving up your homeland, you've practiced, you've done half of your Dharma practice, right? That's what it says, right? And Milarepa said that these are just words of the general Dharma, but it's actually not that much benefit, he said. So he gave many instructions on this, but it really didn't help Rinpoche that much. And not only did it not benefit him, then one time they went to Nyanang. So this is like a valley, right? In Nyanang, there was like a market there, and in that market there were many butchers who sold meat. And so one time when they came, Milarepa and Rinpoche went down to beg for alms and to ask for food if you're not polite about it. So they're going there to beg for food because they're primarily butchers. They're like stacks of flesh and piles of animal heads. And the flayed skins were trained about. There were lots of blood collecting all around. And likewise, there are many sentient beings who are about to be killed. There are many that had been killed, and those who were in a long line, like they're waiting to be slaughtered. And in the center of it all, there was a butcher. And so there are many different ways that you can slaughter sheep. Sometimes they're Sometimes you suffocate them, right? You put a muzzle around you suffocate them by muzzling them. Another way is to cut them and then put your to cut their belly and reach in and cut their cardial arteries. And so he cut the shape, and it was about before he could put his hand. You need to cut the suspension. After he cut once he made the wound, then he lost the sheep. And the sheep, normally the sheep are tied down, but I don't know what he lost the sheep escaped, and the sheep's intestines, its stomach had been cut, and so the intestines ran around with its intestines dragging behind, and as bleeding out blood bleeds, and his sheep was shaking, and it came over to Jetson Milarepa and his disciple for protection. And Milarepa, he came to Milarepa and died right there. Died, and Milarepa is such great compassion that he cried and shed many tears. He had shed many tears and needed transference for the ship immediately. And entered the consciousness onto the bodhisattva path. And out of great compassion, he wrote a song. And I'm going to show you the song. And the reason for this is that for me, this song was really helpful. I'm going to read it. Ema, sentient beings of samsara, look to the path of liberation. Alas, these here of such negativity, what a shame. Ignorant of karma and this human birth with leisures, how deafening is this killing of beings. How regrettable to have such self-delusion. How shameful indeed to kill one's parents. What's wrong to be done with this stack of killed flesh? What to be done with this pooling of blood? Eating meat, however, when hungry is, such confused perception, thinking anything, such negativity without any compassion. Delusive ignorance is obscured about everything. What can be done with such cultivation of misdeeds? Giving torment however they please, such wickedness to those who act in this way. How shameful, oh, how such sadness and heartache. Oh, so busy with negativity and all that they do. Later, they won't remember a single moment. When I see such people, I feel for them. I think of those with such a negative conduct, and I'm disturbed. Rechungpa, doesn't it make you think of the sublime Dharma? If it does, they give rise to sadness and disillusion. If you meditate, go to the mountain retreats. If you contemplate the Guru's kindness. If you escape something, escape from the root of non-virtue. If you let go of something, let go of mundane deeds. If you keep something, keep your promise to practice. If you understand, then bring your life to the Dharma. So what this is saying, this is that you should are being slaughtered. Look at that with compassion. Look at how we're all fooling ourselves. All our parents, our sentient beings are dying. What can we do? It's like we see, and there's nothing we can do about it. And we see the stacks of all the flesh. What are we going to do? We should have this feeling. And if you look at how much blood there is, well, it's like we don't have no idea what to do. When you look at the way people eat meat, you think, that's how hungry. It's like people are eating with no compunction at all. And so he's saying this song. And for me, this is a really helpful song. And so when he sang this song, then Rechungpa also, Rechungpa had many instructions before, and they hadn't helped him before, but now he actually saw a sentient being, a sheep, with its intestines trailing behind it, dying. I felt some world weariness and a wish for liberation. And he said to the Lama, I said, now I'll really give up the eight dharmas and living off of wicked food, and I'll go stay in the mountains. So now where should we go? And so Milarepa said, well, we'll go to Lachi. Let's go to, if we're going to go, let's go to Lachi. Now, there are many people at the market, and they felt they gave many there many people felt faith, and they gave many offerings to Milarepa and his disciple, but it's mainly meat because it's at a butcher's market, and so they didn't accept the offerings, and they went to Lachi, according to the story. Also, if we think about the Kaju, the forefather of Kambodja, Gampopa, and his student Jepap Madrupa, and his disciples Dukung Chopa Singdun, Talong Tampa, and so forth, many Kaju master forefathers practiced vegetarianism. And many of the students who practiced vegetarianism were called the ones who ate the teachings of the vegetarian stock. So a stock here, it's like you make a stock that you put in your soup, and so instead of using meat, they would use vegetarian stock. So they're eating. So basically, saying that they're eating vegetarian soup or vegetarian food, and so that is speaking about them. Likewise, now if you think about the Karma Kansang tradition, as I've mentioned yesterday, from the time of the fourth Karma Ropa Dorje on, at the Karma Gachen until the time of the 10th Karma Poche in Dorje, there was the strict rules against eating meat. Also in Kamsang monasteries, there was some degree of rules about meat, and particularly the people who were vegetarian were considered very highly and praised. Now, even at later times, there was the modern master of the non-Italian. There's a quotation from him that we can look at. I think it's beneficial to look at. One moment, please. So this is the citation from Janggon Köntal Lodro Rinpoche. So what he says is the main points. He said that the people in the faithful people had to give him so many offerings that, so they definitely had like a karmic debt because of this, and a burden because of this, but because Janggon Köntal Lodro Tayo was able to encounter the teachings of the great sage, and in particular the teaching of encountering the secret mantra. His root vows and samaya were unkin, he thought, but it's quite possible that there are violations of secondary samayas. But I've thought that it's important to do the methods of compassion, and made confessions over and over again. And so, for this reason, I have the hope that I don't have any hope of being reborn in a pure land, he said, but I think it's possible that I could achieve a mere human body or two. And so I hope that at that time, I may be reborn in a land that is where it is not necessary to eat meat, be aspirated. And so I thought that there's also a lot of feeling in this citation too.
There are
many other such stories, but there's not a whole lot of time today. So there's no way that I can describe them, that I can go through them all. Now, as I mentioned before, during the time of the Buddha and then later, and during the time that the Buddha flourished in Vinaya, the Vinaya discipline was practiced well, and it was basically practiced exactly taught as in the Vinaya. They had all the situation, all of the facilities that they needed in order to do this. But these days, if we look at the way that monastics live these days, in the oldest, in the southern countries, the Theravada, it's been a long time in the northern countries that it's been a long time since we've gone for daily alms rounds. So these days in monasteries, they particularly make meals for the Sangha. And so they need to gather, keep many foodstuffs, and they also need to buy a lot of food. And so if a monastery were to buy a lot of meat at a single time, to order and buy a lot of meat for a single time to feed their Sangha, then it'd be difficult to say whether or not that is food that is pure in three ways. Because in the time of the Buddha, as I said before, you would go on an alms round. So whatever food you got, we were completely dependent on others. You had no control over it. So basically you ate whatever other people offered you, and you had no power of your own. But if you look at the way we live these days, we go to buy food, particularly for the Sangha, and buy the food for the Sangha. And when we order the food, then that's not under others' control. That's our freedom, right? It's our control that we order. So when we do that, it's a different situation. Likewise, if you order if you order meat for the Sangha in a monastery and go to a butcher in a butchery, then it would be very difficult for it to be pure of the three. Pure in the three ways. For example, in our actual experience in the past, when if in a monastery the monks and nuns ate meat, then they would make one or two new butcher shops near that monastery. Then later, when the monks and nuns in the monastery stopped eating meat, then the butcher shops near the monasteries would close quickly. And this is something that we actually see, right? So the reason why the butcher shop was put there was because the monks and nuns in the monastery ate meat, and so they put the butcher shop there. And all the meat is thinking that would probably pry the animals and buy the meat, and whether he bought the meat or whether he slaughtered the animals, he would be thinking of the monastery to do that. And so if we think about that, if we think about the three ways of meat being pure, then there'd be real suspicions about that food. So later, when we see that, now if we want, then they'd probably sit with their mouth, they'd say, "Oh, probably no." This would pretend to say no, because they need to tell me, "Oh, no, of course not. It's not for you. It's for everyone," they'd say. But inside of them, so they'd be thinking, if we didn't slaughter animals, how do we get meat for you? Meat doesn't fall from the sky. Where do I get the food? They'd be laughing inside. Inside, they'd be laughing. But their mouth, they'd be saying, "Oh, no, this is not for you, your sake," they'd say with their mouths. And so for that reason, the lifestyle of the monastics at the Buddhist time and our current monastic lifetime there's a huge chain that's happened, and we need to understand this. We say meat that is pure in the three ways, but at that time, there's been such a great change in the environment of the lifestyle that at our time, if we try to practice, it's difficult to say it really matches exactly what it should. So it's important for us to understand this. Likewise, people have said this to me. For example, when I was young, I really liked meat. When I was a little kid, we would slaughter animals once a year, and the butchers, we'd have Chinese who would come. They wouldn't join us. They were not Han Chinese, but they're from Sala. They're from the Sala region. They're the Sala people, and they'd come and they'd slaughter the animals. It's actually the same if you killing yourself and having someone else making someone else kill are the same. But the feeling is that if we always feel like it's better to have someone else do the killing, and so we'd have the other people do the killing. And when I was young, you'd see the sentient beings being suffocated and be sweating over their whole body. They didn't die immediately. It was really difficult. You'd have to see them. I'd cry, and I'd jump up and down, and I'd scream. And later, when they're about to butcher animals, they take me away and put me someplace else. And I remember this, and people tell me too, so I remember that myself. Still, after the sentient being was killed, when the meat was served in front of me, then I'd eat it. Because of this place, I'd eat it. Because if there was no, I think that if I was young, when I was young, because of the local custom was to eat meat. If I hadn't eaten, the local custom was to eat meat, so I would eat it. Not only did I eat, I actually really liked it. When I was at Tsurpo Monastery, there is this Tsurpo's dry meat. It's really, really delicious. The governor of Lhasa really liked it too. He'd say, bring me the Tsurpo dry meat. Don't bring me anything else, he'd say. So it was pretty well known. So it was really delicious, and I really liked it. And then when I got to India, and he said, there's not a whole, if you compare it to the Tibetan meat, Indian meat just doesn't have much flavor. It doesn't really have any flavor. When I was in Tibet, I never eat goat. But when I got to India, then I was served goat a few times, and it's I don't need to really speak about it much. But then also I saw some movies about how animals are slaughtered. When I saw them, I thought, no, there's no way now. It's no okay to eat meat. Just no way I can eat meat, I thought. And I decided to give up meat. And that's when I began. Some people say from that time, was that my giving up meat was because of the influence of Haitao Fa. Sure. But whoever it was, and it doesn't matter who it was, it doesn't matter. I think it's very good. There's nothing bad about it. It's good, in fact. But the actual fact, the real reason why, when I saw how sentient beings are slaughtered in the video, what I thought at that time was that I haven't taken birth in a body where I need to take sentient beings in this life in this lifetime, but it's not impossible that would happen to me in next lifetime. So from now on, so I need to make an aspiration never to be reborn in a body where I need to take other sentient beings' lives, and I need to have that impetus. And so I had that resolve, and at that time I wrote this verse goes, I've forgotten the verse now. Oh, this is it. If we think about the sufferings of sentient beings under the sky, then think about their suffering, then there's no way I want to be from my life, and I need to give up eating meat. So for that time, I began giving up meat. But other people, I didn't have much plan to really encourage people to vegetarianism or eat meat. And then at one time, the Kaji Munlam, I thought it'd be, some people said to me it would be good to speak about this during the Kaji Minlam, and encourage people. But if I encourage the, I thought that the best is that people would think for themselves and give up of their own volition, as opposed to someone telling them to do that. I thought there's no point to that. It'd be ridiculous. So I didn't have any plans to that. But from 2004, on the last day of the Kaji Minlam 2004, there was a vegetarian group in Bodh Gaya, and they said, please, you should speak about it. And so I didn't plan to speak about it initially, but people requested me to. And so for that day, I spoke about the importance of being vegetarianism. And I said, if the best make the aspiration or the resolve to give up eating meat for your entire life, or to give it up, the middle is to give up every week, or if the least is give up once a month or something. So, and I said that it's important for us to give some interest to give up eating meat, as you all know. But at that time, because of me saying this at that time, many people, I didn't think many people would support me in this, but as I looked up and we were having the situation, now at that time we were at the Mahabodhi temple in Bodh Gaya, and I couldn't see everyone, but if I looked at it, and so when I said this, then I looked around and I said, at least half the people were raising their hands. And I said, oh, those of you who want to give up meat for the rest of your life, then raise your hand. And I looked around and half the people there gave it up. And I was just surprised that there's so many people who did this. And then so many people said that even later, there's some people who said that there's some people said to me, it'd be good for me because because if you don't eat meat, your body will get unhealthy. You grew up in an environment where you ate meat. And so for that reason, so it would be good for eating meat. And other people would say to me that I'm the karma. And so from the karma, then you'll make a connection with all those sentient beings. And then you'll be able to guide all of the sentient beings to Sakhavati, or to a good rebirth, they would say. There are people who did say this, but I know whether I'm able to guide anyone. I can't even bring myself to Purim. How can I bring anyone else there? So forget about bringing anyone. So for that reason, I kind of insisted, and until now, and that's probably at least been at least 10 years. And the most experience I have about that is that the biggest difference between when I was eating, with the time when I ate meat, and now is that when I was eating, it helps me have more compassion for the sentient being, or empathy for other sentient beings, and for feeling for the suffering of the sentient beings. When you're eating meat, because when you're eating, you just don't really think about it. But now, once you've given up eating meat, and you see the flesh of an animal that's been killed, then you immediately feel uncomfortable, and you actually begin to think about it. And so I think that is definitely a big difference still. But in Tibetan, there is a saying. Saying the compassionate eat meat, those who can samai eat alcohol. And so what they're saying is there is a compassion that you're going to. They said that that sentient beings are going to be killed, and once you've eaten, then if you go there, if you recite the names of the Buddhas, recite the mantras of the Buddha, make aspirations for them, and then if you eat that meat, then that benefits those sentient beings, they say. Likewise, when you're eating meat, if you recite mantras at that time, and if you recite the names of the Buddhas, there are texts that describe how to do this. However, if we actually really think about it, there's a quote from Drupa Kunla, which I think is really quite true. And what he said is that you say that if meat is compassionate, but the best thing is not to eat it. because of the compassionate eat meat, it's really difficult to eat meat compassionately. And so he just said a story. So I'm going to tell you the story. And the story is that Drupa Kunle went to this region, and there's a great drought, and the crops were not growing, and there's a great famine, and people didn't have anything else. No one had anything to eat. It was a very difficult time. And at that time, there was one family, and in that family, there were two the two parents and then the son, and the three of them had a really difficult time. They had nothing to eat, and it's because the parents thought to themselves, we've grown old. If one of us dies, then if our child eats our meat, then the child can live for a little bit longer. What the child was thinking is like there's no way I can think of my parents dying. So instead, if I die and then they eat my body, then I think it's good. That's what he thought. To the end, what happened? So the child, he decided, and he committed suicide. So he killed himself. But he left a note. The reason why I'm dying is so that the two of you do not die of hunger, and so you must eat my meat. And if you don't eat my meat, then there's no point to me dying. So the parents had no choice but to eat his meat. If you don't eat the son's meat, then the son died for their sake. So they had no choice but when you ate it, was there any flavor to it? Did it taste good? No, how could there be? They had to eat it as they're crying. So they're eating and crying at the same time. And so that's the way the compassionate people should eat flesh, should eat meat. In the Mahagana, there's no sentient being that's not your mother. So you need to think of all sentient beings as your parent, as your mother and father, and think of them as that way. And if you love them as your parents and parents, and so you wouldn't eat your mother and father's session unless you just came to the very end. Even at that time, you probably wouldn't eat it. No matter how desperate you were, you wouldn't eat their situation. If you have to do it, it should be like that. It should be like that situation. It should be like a situation. Find that there's no choice but to eat. And if you eat at that time, how could there be any taste to it? You should eat it as tears flow down, shed down your cheeks. We say we're eating compassion as we eat it, but where's our compassion? We just, recite a short prayer at the beginning, and we immediately start wolfing down the food. It's like we don't have the time to really make this, and we rush to bring. We have no hesitation about bringing the food to our mouth with no feeling. We're just eating. We have no restraint at all. And to say that eating food like that is just words. But in actuality, it's difficult to really be that. And some people say this. Some people think so that if you eat meat, that you have no compassion. But there's no. That's not certain necessarily so. Now, there are many great beings who eat meat. If you say that they have no compassion, you can't say that, right? But generally, if we should take the great sentient beings as an example. We say the great beings do this, so we can do it, but the acts of great beings are different than ours. We can't know what qualities of abandonment and realization, what their qualities and their being are. If we haven't got to the level that they're at, so if we act as if we're taking them as an example, it just wouldn't work out the same way. And so for that reason, it is important to take this into account. If we say that the compassionate eat meat, it's the nice words, but you have to think about how would you actually mean it. It's not really easy to feel compassion and then eat meat. You wouldn't do it unless you had no choice. It's really difficult otherwise if it has not a desperate situation. In any case, You don't need a lot of scriptures and real and logic to give up meat, but you don't really need that scripture and logic. Generally, if you're a meat, even an ordinary person, just an ordinary person who doesn't practice Dharma, think about they would have good reasons to practice it. If you don't need all those, there's no need to give them quotations about the Buddhas or the people or the great masters of the past. It's easy for them. If just your ordinary people who don't practice Dharma, they think, well, they do it. If we're going to a restaurant, right? If you need to go to the bathroom, for example, if you go to the bathroom, do you need scriptures and realization to prove to you that you need to go to the bathroom? You don't. When you get to the time when you have to go, then immediately your body tells you. Your body's saying, go, go, go. And if you don't go at that time, then it's difficult, right? It's the same thing. If you think well, if an ordinary person really thinks about it, they'll understand the reasons why you should practice vegetarianism. If you look on YouTube, there are videos of young children who are like 4 and 5 years old. If they understand that you have to kill sentient beings in order to kill animals in order to get meat, then they won't eat it, right? Children at the age of 4 and 5 know it. They can even think about it. Most children, if you put many children don't really know that meat comes from killing animals. For these days, meat comes from a supermarket these days. It comes up, it's wrapped in plastic. It's displayed nicely in a cellophane wrap. And if you look at this, and you think that it's probably just comes out of that, they don't really understand that it comes from killing a sentient being. So the children don't know. If the children know, if you bring a child and bring a chicken in front of the child and say if we kill it and say, now are you going to eat it? Most of them wouldn't eat it, right? They say, it's really beautiful. It's a really nice chicken. I'm not going to hurt it. I'm not going to eat it. It'd be hard to find any who'd say that they would eat it. And so for that reason, we don't need a lot of quotations and logic. If we need to use logic and quotations in order to prove to us that we need to do something that ordinary people can understand than us, then it's actually a bit of a disgrace. No, I think that there are actually 2 types of people who don't eat meat. One is those who don't eat it for their own sake, those who don't eat it for others. Those who don't eat it for their own sake are people who don't eat it for their health or because of tradition and being used to the tradition. Now, those who do it for others' sake, or those who think about the suffering of animals or think about environmental protection and don't eat it, and they don't eat meat for those reasons. So these are the reasons why people don't eat meat, right? Now, generally, if we think about people in the world, in terms of the world overall, the Buddha and Buddhism, many people think when you say Buddha or Buddhism, they understand this as being like a symbol of loving kindness, compassion, and peace. When you say Buddhist, they don't immediately think about emptiness and selflessness. There are very few who actually understand that. Basically, when you say Buddhist, then people say, oh, they teach love, they teach kindness, nonviolence, they like peace. And so that's the feeling that most people have. And so, because that's then the image that most people have of Buddhists, their understanding of Buddhism, if while they still have that, we without any resist eat meat and drink blood, then people are going to wonder, well, what's going on? And so for this reason, I think it's important to know what other people's opinions are first. We shouldn't think about only our own habits and our own thoughts. We can't totally disregard other people's ways of thinking and their habits, particularly in the Mahayana. We want to free all sentient beings from suffering and bring them to happiness. And this is the primary work of the Mahayana. even in our aspirations, we say, may all sentient beings be happy and to be free of and have the causes happy. May they be free of suffering and the causes of the suffering. And so we say this, and at the same time, on the other hand, in order to, if you're harming so many sentient beings for our food, then it's basically, it's contradictory with the aspiration we're always making. And so that's something that we really need to think about it. Whether we're eating meat or not is not like understanding emptiness or understanding selfless. Is not something that's so complicated or profound. If you think about it, it's very easy to understand. We can easily understand it. And it's easy for anyone to understand it. If we look in the Vinaya, in fact, that the meat that's pure in the three ways, we have to say the particular reason why it's pure in the three ways. There's a reason why it's said about meat, but not about rice. And the reason for that is that because of meat, there's a danger of harming many sentient beings. And for that reason, we have to examine whether it is pure in the three ways or not. And because of that, a piece of meat and a cup of rice are very different situations. And if in terms of the Vinaya, this is something that we need to consider carefully. Still, what we do is, though, we think, I didn't kill it myself, and I didn't have anyone kill it for my sake, so there's it's not a big deal, we think. But I wonder, is that really like that? Because these days, the way we live on this world has changed in terms of, and it's gone into the livestock farming and animal husbandry. And so there would be as many butchers and meat sellers as there are people who eat, and as people who eat meat. And so there's a great actual influence on the number of people who eat meat as there are meat. So it's not just a question of not doing misdeeds ourselves. We also, for the sake of other sentient beings who commit misdeeds, we need to think about them too. We need to think about what can we do for them is something we need to consider. So next, what I'd like to speak about is actually that in this world, on this earth, how many sentient beings, I think how much, and because of killing or eating those sentient beings, what if in brief. Can you all hear me, right? There's Oxford University in Great Britain. Which has a website that summarizes our data, our world in data. What this teaches us is that from 1968 until 2018, over 50 years, the world production of livestock tripled throughout the entire world. So it tripled. And so for that reason, during the single year of 2018, for livestock production, the amount of livestock production, that is the meat that was produced through livestock farming, the number is the amount of meat from there are tons, right? So a ton is 1,000 kilos, right? So if 1 ton, for every tons, there are 340 million tons of meat produced. And this includes 69 billion chickens, 69 billion chickens in 1 year, 1.5 billion pigs. So, and so a billion is like 1,000 million, right? So it's 1.5 billion. 574 million sheep, 479 million goats, 302 million cattle. That's what it includes in that number. So if we total them all, if we explain it from another way, if we talk about it in a different way, if we just think about the single year of 2018, if we don't think about seafood, if we only talk about livestock, the number of animals slaughtered was 10 times greater than the total human population of the world. And the total 10 times more than the entire human population of the world was killed, or animals was killed. Now these numbers are too huge, and so we can't understand them. So if we want to calculate how many were killed in a single day, so how many animals are killed in a single day? We can look at that. So over the entire world on a single day, the minimum 190 million chickens are slaughtered. Million chickens are slaughtered. And on a single day, at a minimum, 4.1 million pigs are slaughtered every day. And in a single day, 1.57 million sheep are slaughtered every day. And among the sheep, most of them are killed before they're young, they're lambs. They're killed before they're a year old. And some of them are killed before they even reach 2 months old. So many lambs are slaughtered. Every day, the minimum in the entire world we have goats, right? 1.3 million goats are slaughtered every day. So goats mainly are raised for milk production. And so they're raised for milk. And so if a billy goat has died, if there's a male kid that doesn't have any meat, so they're immediately sent to the slaughterhouse and killed. Likewise, and every day, and there's 1 million cows or 1 million cattle are slaughtered every day. And so in this way, if we think about that, there's a place called Cowspiracy. Now I can't pronounce it well, but there's a cowspiracy.com website. And what it says is that every day, in every hour of every day, 6 million animals are slaughtered for human consumption. Every year, 6 million animals. Every hour, 6 million animals are slaughtered for human consumption. This is just really scary to think about. It's you can't even count that much. Now that is just livestock. Now, if we count this is not counting seafood and fish. And the reason for that is it's difficult to count each individual fish. It's hard to count the totals. Even if you can't count it's difficult to count the exact number, but generally, every day, there are probably there are probably 3 billion fish. 3 billion fish are killed every day. So the fish is like a billion is like 1,000 millions, right? So this is like 3,000 million fish. So every day. So basically, pretty much 3 billion fish are killed, but there's probably actual numbers killed is hard than that. And the reason for that is that when you're catching fish, the same time as you're catching the fish, you're fishing for a particular species of fish, but many other types of fish also get caught. And when those are caught, the other caught that are caught, and also other marine species that are not meat. There are many small of these, and many of these are also caught at the same time. When they're caught, there's no use for them, and they're just thrown. Some are wounded in the process, and then they get sick, and in the end they die. There's just no use for them. They're thrown over, and so there's no point to their dying. There's the World Economic Forum, and it says that in 2016, the total world production of seafood was, they say, there were 155 million tons of seafood production. So if you think about all the sentient beings, the millions of sentient beings were killed every day. And if it's decide if they were killed, if there was like a use to it, and if they actually eat the humans actually eat that food, do we eat it? Or are they eaten? They aren't. In actual fact, many animals die meaninglessly. They're slaughtered, but they don't get to our plates, and they die without any meaning. For example, according to the UN Food and according to the
Agriculture Organization,
Agricultural Organization 2015 annual report. So the UN Food and Agriculture Organization's 2015 annual report, 1/3 of the total world food production is spoiled or wasted. Basically, 1/3 of it is just wasted. If you have 3 parts, if you have that a third of the world production is just wasted. And what includes that? And so that is like, including meat, as a fifth of all the meat. For example, there's like, if you have 100, it's like 20% of all meat is wasted. Another way to think about it is if you're thinking about killing 7 billion animals, then if 70 million animals are slaughtered, then 14 million are pointlessly wasted. And particularly the seafood, they're all the seafood and all those, and the proportion of them, but it's very easy for them to go bad. And so the percentage for them is much higher. It's a much higher proportion than of the livestock that goes bad. So if you think about seafood, every year, 35% of each ton of seafood caught is wasted. It goes bad. And so that's just base summary of how many animals are slaughtered every year. Now, with those animals, how are the animals raised before they're slaughtered? How are they cared for? When they're killed, how are they slaughtered? If we actually have to talk about this is just a really terrifying situation. Just thinking about it's like you'd be terrified. It's like the hells in the animal. It's like this is the suffering that I've experienced, and in the hells are the animals are experiencing the same sufferings that we say are experiencing in the hells. There's no difference. It's like we can't even describe it. We can't even dare talk about it. Basically, we think that all the livestock we are keeping, as long as they're living, they're kept given a corral they can stay. They have a feed that they're given. They can go where they want. Like, for example, in Tibet, when you keep livestock in Tibet, as long as they're alive, they've got a bit of freedom. It's kind of nice for them. If you ask, is that how it is? That's not how it is for them. Most animals, the way they're raised, and the way they're slaughtered, if we were actually to see it with our own eyes, I think basically from that time, we wouldn't dare to eat meat, or the meat would have no flavor. It definitely would happen, I think, because we generally don't see it. We don't see how the sentient beings are slaughtered. We don't see what happens to how they're raised with our eyes. For the one thing, it's good, because if we saw them from that point, we wouldn't dare to eat meat. We'd all become people who had no taste for meat anymore. Likewise, there are many animals that are raised in this world for our food, right? And this livestock production has a really strong, it causes a lot of environmental destruction. This is something we also need to think about. This is really important. It's not just the slaughtering animals. It's not just but what destruction are we causing to the environment because of raising those animals? For example, to give an example, in the entire world, in order to raise livestock, in a single year, how much water is used? It is 345 trillion liters of water used for livestock production around the world. When we say 35 trillion liters, and so this is like these Tibetan numbers here. They're difficult to count in the Tibetan numbers. It's easier to just say trillion in English. 345 trillion liters of water are used. The drinking water for the human population for a single year is just 8.6 trillion liters. But the water drunk by the animals, 345 trillion liters. So the amount of water used for livestock production would provide for the human population drinking water for the human population for 40 years. If humans were to drink the water that the animals are given, it would last us for 40 years. Like we have a pound, right? A pound is like a unit of weight, right? If you have a pound of beef, to produce that beef requires, how much water does that require? It requires 11,000 liters of water to produce 1 pound of beef. So if you have the hamburgers, right? You see those. In order to make enough meat, have enough beef for a hamburger patty, in order to make a patty of beef, you need 3,550 liters of water to produce that. And if you take a person could take a shower every day for half a year. And that would use the same amount of water as is needed to make a single patty of a hamburger. The amount of water to make the hamburger patty and the amount of water to take for a person to shower daily. We have to clean drinking. Of course, there's the ocean. The oceans are huge, but we can't drink ocean water because it's salt water, right? So the potable water, the drinkable water, and there's not a lot of it is clean. And all that clean water, a third of that drinkable water, if you divide all the water to 3 parts, is used for livestock production. So, the amount of water that we humans on the earth drink is 25.6 billion liters of water. But the water drunk by all the cattle kept in earth is 250 billion liters of water, just for animals. Thus, the amount of water drunk by cattle is more than 9 times the amount of the total amount drunk by humans. And so for that reason, so a lot of water is used to raise livestock, and that's important for us to know. Likewise, if we were to weigh all the food that we sent all of us humans on Earth to eat, it would be 9.5 billion kilos of food. But the amount of food that a cattle on Earth, cattle alone on Earth is 61 billion kilos of animal feed. So it's over 6 times more food than is eaten by humans. And so there's a huge amount of usage of water. Also, if you think about land usage, a lot of over half of the Earth's land surface is used to raise livestock. And it's if we think about the use of land, think about the depletion of the oceans, water pollution, destruction of biodiversity, the main cause of all of these is the main cause, the most strongest influence is livestock production. And so we can see this and understand that. Similarly, there's also the waste. There's a lot that is wasted that from producing animals. For example, if there's a feedlot with 2,500 cattle produces as much waste as a city with a population of 410, more waste than a city with a population of 410,000 people. There's all the waste of that city with 410,000. And the same amount as waste as comes from a feedlot with 2,500 cattle. For example, in the amount of waste from livestock is 130 times as much as the waste produced by humans. So in America alone, if we just weighed the amount of waste produced by livestock, it is probably in America alone is just 5,200, 600 kilos per minute, in every minute. If we were to weigh that in terms of cars, right, it would be the same weight as 35 cars. That's what they say. Likewise, if you think about the oceans, it's similar. With there's a lot, so there's a lot of difficult because of taking. There's a lot of environmental discussion. There's discussion to the oceans, discussion to the environment, and in particular, if one thing we need to think about is that the Earth, there are many children in the world who do not have enough food. They're malnourished, undernourished children. And the countries where they live, what they do is they use most of the food for the sake of animals. It's fed to animals. It's not given to people. So given to animals. And the animals, what is it that the animals are used for? They're sent off to the rich Western countries. The food is not given to the people, but it's given to the livestock. And in particular, the world, if you look at the data from the World Environmental Organizations, you think that the greenhouses we have the greenhouse gases around the world, right? And so there's a lot of, because of these gases, this causes global warming. And 18% of the greenhouse gas emissions comes from animal agriculture and livestock. And so the greenhouse gases produced by livestock production is more than is produced by all the cars, airplanes, trucks, trains, boats, and all of their forms of transportation. Then the amount of the greenhouse gas produced by livestock production is greater than the amount produced by all the transportation in the world. And so it's a lot of environmental destruction that's being caused by livestock production. And so if you think about it for many different reasons, there are many reasons to give up meat and be a vegetarian. Whether or not you have faith in Dharma, if you look at the actual situation in the world, there's a lot to think about. It's very clear. However, when you actually come to put it into practice, and giving up meat and practice vegetarian, you have to have a limit. You have to be very skillful about it because you have to look at your own physical health. It's important to do it in a way that matches your health. Likewise, as I've said before, to give up meat and be vegetarian should be something that you decide for yourself and that you want to do yourself. It shouldn't. If you think to yourself, the Buddha said to do this, I'm going to be a vegetarian. It shouldn't be like that. You should see the reasons for yourself. Decide for yourself. And if you give up meat and practice vegetarianism that way, it's good. Instead, if you just follow it as a tradition, or they say the guru says to do it, so I'm going to give up meat. I don't really, but even though you don't really want to, then there's no point in doing that. There's not a whole lot of reason for that. In order for there's a real purpose and a real good reason to do it, then you need to decide that you want to do it for yourself. And that you should make your own, that you should see it for yourself and recognize yourself. A lot of people are really attached to the taste of meat, and because of that, they're not able to give up meat. That's the real crux of the matter. People are attached to the taste of meat. Meat tastes good, so they think, I can't give up meat at all. There are a lot of people who think like that. Not being able to give up meat because of the taste in, if you're attached to it, whether you're talking about in terms of Vinaya or whether you're talking about the Maya, that's something, Mahayana, that's something that you need to give up. And the reason for that is because it is attachment. Is when you're attached and craving something. And so in Vinaya is primarily about giving up desires and attachments. And in the Mahayana, there's a danger, according to the Mahayana, there's the danger of harming sentient being out of your attachment to the taste of flesh. And so it is also prohibited in the Mahayana. And so as we I think when there are many people who try to prove that they're able to eat meat, I think they're probably it's because they're attached to the taste of meat and they don't want to give it up, and so they're making they're disputing it for that reason. But you can't just say that because I'm saying that. You have to look at yourself. I think you have to look at it. You have to look at the reason, why am I, you have to think for yourself, why am I unable to give up meat? And understand your own reasons for not giving meat and be honest with yourself about it. Generally, giving up eating meat is good. But whether you're able to give up meat depends upon your health and your environment and so forth. You have to do that. And also, if you give up meat and then get attached to that and think you're really great for that, that's no point in that. Because if we give up, because giving up meat in order to helps other sentient beings and protect those sentient beings is something we should do. It's just not something that we should be conceited about. There's no reason why we should feel pride about doing something that we should just do anyways. And so if we give up meat or stuff and then we talk down to people who haven't given up meat or disparage them, that's not good. Doing that is not good at all. So as I said before, there's a danger of it turning into the austerities of Devadatta. The Devadatta wanted to diminish the Buddha, and he had competitiveness of the Buddha. So he had a mistaken motivation for that reason. Devadatta's actions were not correct. That is why. And so if we also do have wrong motivation, then it wouldn't be wrong to say that we're doing the same thing as Devadatta. Also there are people who can't give up meat, and if you're not able to give up meat, there's something that people You have to speak about the, because some people, if there are people who, if they don't eat meat, they get sick. So I missed a bit of what His Holiness said for technical reasons, but he's saying that basically there are people who get into fights. And so if you get into fights, and this doesn't help the people who've given up meat, doesn't help the people who haven't given up meat. And particularly in Tibet there, if we have conflict like that in Tibet, then it really will seem strange to people who see it. There's a danger that it'll seem very bad. And for these reasons, we shouldn't think about the way, only about the way we see things, the way we think about things. We also need to think about how other people see things and how they think about it. You need to look at others and also look at yourself. You need to look at both. It's like when you need to look at others because you need a mirror to see yourself. With the eye of prajna, you need to look at yourself. So, and you need, but in order to look at yourself with your eye of prajna, you need to have your physical eyes to look at others. And so this is something we all have to keep in mind. And so here, that is enough about the talk about topic of vegetarianism and the realization topic of the Great Encampment. Now, there's so much to say, but because of the lack of time and the not lack of time to prepare, that's all I can say. Now, tomorrow we have one day tomorrow, then we have a day of a day off, and then we have one more day of teaching, and then we will do the Guru Yoga. And I still haven't decided which Guru Yoga we're going to practice. And so I need to think about that. Okay, that is enough.